Thank you for joining Family Caregiver Alliance for self-care for young adult caregivers. For over 4 decades, Family Caregiver Alliance has been working across the Bay Area and the nation to improve the well-being of family caregivers. We offer support through consultations, classes, workshops, publications, research, and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about us or access our online resource center, CareNav, please visit us at caregiver.org. And now I'd like to welcome our presenter, Jen Chan. Jen is the CEO and founder of Senior Shower Project, a gift shop with a mission to celebrate family caregivers of older adults with a party. Inspired by her 10 plus years of caregiving for her grandmother, Jen dedicated her career to elevating the family caregiver role with fun, love, and positivity. She believes caregiving is a lifestyle and becoming a senior caregiver is a life milestone worth celebrating. As a certified senior advisor and certified caregiving consultant, Jen works with nonprofit organizations that serve LGBTQ plus older adults, dementia caregivers, and younger adult caregivers. She leads self care workshops and also facilitates social support groups. So now that you know a little bit about today's presenter, I'd like to turn things over to Jen.
Mm. Hello, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. And Calvin, thank you for the introduction. I'm absolutely excited to be here today to talk about self-care for young adult caregivers. And the reason why is because I myself was a young caregiver for my grandma. I would say many moons ago. I was a young caregiver in my time. I started caregiving in my mid-20s to my mid-30s. And I'll tell you a little bit about my caregiving journey. But I just wanted to let you know that if you're a young adult caregiver tuning in into this session, you are amongst community. I have been there, and I hope I can shed some insight on how you can think about self-care as something that you can do for yourself and why it's important. But before I go there, I do want to mention, with all the work that I've done, I'm actually also in this space here with Family Caregiver Alliance. I do work with Family Caregiver Alliance and facilitate the Young Adult Caregiver Support Group here. This group with Family Caregiver Alliance is a group of young adult caregivers. I say age group from 18 to say 40-ish. It's very flexible age range. And this group meets twice a month on the first and third Thursdays. From 6 to 7 p.m., 6 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. I like to throw that out there because if you find that you're seeking more community after the self-care presentation, then definitely contact Family Caregiver Alliance to see how you can sign up for the Young Adult Caregiver Support Group. All right. Well, let's get this started. I told you I'd tell you a little bit about my journey. I'm going to go ahead and open my presentation and take you through a few slides about my journey and talk all about self-care today. All right, you with me? All right, let's do this. All right, give me a moment here. Okay. And as I go through my presentation, if you do have questions, please save them for the end of the presentation. I'll have time to answer some of your questions. And during this presentation, if I do ask you to participate, it is volunteer. So if you feel like sharing within the Zoom chat window, pop it in there, and I'll read the comments, and I'll see if I can read all of them. And then part of being in these sessions is really I'm going to emphasize again, being in community. So by sharing your thoughts and feelings in these chats as I go through these prompts, you may be able to be connecting with other people, other caregivers here in these chat. All right, here we go. My caregiving journey. I mentioned I took care of my grandma. My grandma had diabetes, and the diabetes condition made her ankles swollen. So over time, grandma needed to, her physicality changed. She had to be on a walker, use a walker, and then eventually she needed to be in a wheelchair. And also by being in a wheelchair, part of my caregiving duties for her is to help her transfer, toilet, bathe, all the things we would do at home. you'll see a picture here on the left side here. It's a picture of my grandma, me, and my brother. This is a family photo of us back in Hong Kong, and she raised us. I show this photo because she took care of us, and I consider her pretty much my mom and dad. So grandma was the person who raised us, and uh, when we moved back from Hong Kong back to here in San Jose, California, we lived under the same house. My brother and I lived with my grandma. And as she started aging and as her diabetes condition progressed, my brother, John, and I decided that we needed to take care of our grandma. We saw that her physicality was changing. And since we lived in the same household, um, we said, let's take care of grandma to the best of our abilities. My brother and I made a pact, actually. We verbally said, hey, let's take care of grandma as much as we possibly could until we needed professional help. And in the middle here, you'll see there's grandma and I, we were able to get out of the house once in a while. And this was us in San Francisco, enjoying ourselves. Um, I do believe in like caregiving. If you're able to sprinkle some happiness and joy in caregiving, it really makes the journey a little bit easier and more fulfilling. And here we're out having fun, smiling and getting some fresh air. Um, and thank you, Alice. And I see a message of the photos sharing family photos. I think are really precious. So thank you for checking it out. And I'm going to look at all the way to the right. That's a birthday cake. That birthday cake says happy 98th birthday. My brother and I, we took care of our grandma for 10 years. Gonna emphasize again, we did that when we were in our mid-20s to mid-30s. My brother was also, we're only 1 year apart. So we were both still in our, let's just say our young adulthood years when we were taking care of our grandma. And we really fulfilled our pact. We said, we're gonna take care of her and took care of her 10 years. Grandma made it to 98. And we really ensured that all of her wishes were met. Living in the same house with her, we towards the end of her life, the last 6 months was hospice care. And she wanted to age in place. She wanted to die in her own home. So my brother and I ensured that we had the hospice care team and the support system here at home so that we can be with grandma while she lived the last couple months of her life. It was towards the end that my grandma had a stroke. I was actually right by her side. Uh, she had a stroke, and then 2 days later, she died and she transitioned from this world. And this happened in May 2015. Today it's 2024. That's the year 2024. But even though her passing was in May 2015, it still feels like yesterday because caregiving was such a huge part of my life. I mean, I mentioned adulthood because during that time, I've only at that time, let's just say roughly I've lived, 25 to 35. That's a third of my life. I wasn't even 30 yet, that's basically a third of my life. So those, for me, it was a huge thing. It was very impactful. And it was, it wasn't easy. And, we try to figure it out. My brother and I just, trial and error. We did what we could. But you know what? There's an easier way to do that now. I think there's a lot of conversation about caregiving. And for today's presentation, I want to let you know that it can be easier and in a way where if you can create a framework about with caregiving through self-reflection and self-awareness, you'll be able to take on caregiving and perhaps in an easier mindset. And that is for you to discover. So today, during this presentation, I invite you to take on a framework, which here I will say is called the Golden Circle. Uh, right here, I want to explain the Golden Circle for you. If you're not familiar with the Golden Circle right here is a theory created by Simon Sinek. He is a thought leader that really inspires and coaches businesses and individuals on how to understand why they do what they do. And he created this golden circle right here. You see, there's three circles here. The inside says why, the middle says how, and the outside says what. And Simon says, you know, to understand why you do what you do, you got to go from within, to figure out your why. You start with why. So here he says why is defined as a purpose, a cause, or a belief. And then the middle circle, how. And the how is how you bring your why to life, you know, how you bring your purpose or cause or your belief to life. And here, the third circle out here is what you do. So in thinking about caregiving, we know what we do. We are caregivers, you know, we know the tasks, like I mentioned earlier. What are the things that we do? You know, driving to doctor's appointment, packing medication, um, things that you do. But if we want to figure out the bigger purpose on why we're caregivers, we got to focus on why. So I'm going to invite you to take on this framework of the same golden circle, but I modified it a little bit and calling it the golden circle for caregivers. And here are the same three circles here, but I'm presenting it in a way where we're relating it to caregiving. So let's start with these three circles here. There's why, how, and what. So let's go in the middle. Why? Think about why. Why are you caregiving? Why are you caregiving as a young adult? Now, the next part is how. How will you keep on caregiving? How do you feel about caregiving? How will you keep doing this, performing this caregiving role? And then the third circle out here is what? What are you going to do? Now keep this framework in mind because this golden circle for caregivers is a way to approach caregiving, and it creates a mindset. Here, looking at the golden circle here, in order to answer the questions of why, how, and what, we have to go through, I'm inviting you to go through a process of self-reflection to answer the question of why. And then to answer the question of how is to think about yourself. Think about our self-awareness of how we caregive. Thinking about yourself. And thirdly, here, the what. The what here is about self-care. Try on this framework. Take a look at it again here, just so you know where are we going with this conversation. Going from within, why? We're going to focus on self-reflection. All right. And then we're going to answer the questions of how, and it's about having self-awareness. And then the what is going to be our discussion for today of self-care. So let's start with why. As Simon Sinek says, once we figure out our why, we will figure out our purpose, our cause, or our belief on why we do what we do. So I invite you to think about this right now. Let's do this for self-reflection. Why are you caregiving? Why are you a caregiver? Why do you do what you do every day as a caregiver? I'm just going to pause here. And then I'm going to add on, as young adult caregivers, have people asked you this? Have they asked you, why are you caregiving? Have other people in your community asked, why are you a caregiver for this person? And have you asked yourself, why do you do what you do? A way to discover your why for caregiving is to know your values. Understand your values can give you a reason, an explanation, or explain the purpose of why you're caregiving. Here, and are you aware of your values? Do you know what your values are? Here, I've pulled a list of examples from a list of values that was researched by the researcher and storyteller Brene Brown. Brene studies and researches shame and vulnerability and collected all this data about examples of personal values. And you'll see that there is a link down on the bottom to the sheet of values because she collected over 100 personal values. And I just put 16 up here. And I'm going to read each of these values. And the reason why I'm going to read each of these 16 values, it is so that you may hear about these values and think about if it evokes a specific emotion for you. If there's a strong emotion, like if any of these values seem important to you, there's a specific significance. And I'm going to read these. And if you already know some of your values and your values are not on there, then please drop them in the chat and share with the other folks that are tuned in on this session of other examples of values. Like I said, I only have 16 here. There's over 100 plus. So I mean, this is just a starting point, but I want to make sure that I'm able to cover some of these for folks on this presentation today who may not have considered their personal values lately or at all. This is just an example, a starting point of how you can figure out what your values are. And to link to why I'm discussing these values, it goes back to why. Why are you caregiving? Why do you choose to be a caregiver? You know, the common answer could be, well, because I take care of my family, or because I made a vow. You know, if you're an adult care, if you are taking care of a person, maybe you're true to your word, and you said, this is what I'm going to do, so I'm going to stick with it. That's as an example. By breaking down your answers of why, you can base it on these values. It may fall in these categories or not. Maybe it's a combination of everything. Let's take a look at these values right here. And so here we have the first one, accountability. Does that resonate with you? Is that a value that holds dear to you, that you respect? And oops, sorry about that. Let me go back to the slide. And a sense of belonging. Perhaps a value is belonging to a community, belonging to something, you know. Values, the culture. Is that important to you? Family. I will assume for most of us on this call today, family is of value. It is a value of ours, and we can unpack a little bit more. I just wanted to put this out here of the reason why you're a caregiver, because you value family. That's your reason for the why. Well, honesty, humility, integrity, kindness, love, loyalty, patience, respect, spirituality, tradition, trust, and well-being. What values here resonate with you as who you are, what you hold important, what is significant to you? Feel free to drop your value into the chat if you want to join this conversation. I'll give you a moment. All right. Well, I'd like to share my value with you. Oh, here we go. Sam, thank you for dropping in. Family, honesty, loyalty. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, and then I was just about to share too. My value is also family, loyalty, and I will add on to my personal value. It is culture. Going back to our circle of the golden circle of caregivers, the inside circle of why. My why for caregiving for my grandma is because of family and cultural values. And I want to share that with you. When I did this exercise, I thought, what are my values as a family caregiver? Well, I value family, love, and that bond of having family around. But culture really came up for me. Culture was because I was raised in the Chinese culture. And in the Chinese culture, part of that culture, you take care of your elders. That was just ingrained in me as my grandma raised me. It was all around me. I saw a lot of people taking care of elders, and I can recall this when I was living in Hong Kong, and even being here in my and living here with grandma and back in San Jose here. We lived in a multi-generational house. We had a lot of family come in and out. We had lots of cousins, aunties, and uncles and grandmas, and I just saw people, my family members, taking care of the elders in the family. So for me, that was a value that is part of my core. So when it came to caregiving, when it came to noticing that my grandma needed more physical help, with just her mobility because of the diabetes, I said, okay, well, there's no question. My brother and I easily made the pact. We said, okay, well, it's time for us to take care of grandma. And that was because we had that value within us and that we carried all the way through. Even in the toughest days, I look back to it and I say, wow, it is the value of respecting, taking care of our elders that really pulled us through those 10 years of why we keep on doing what we do, right? Going back to the questions of why are you a caregiver? Why are you caregiving and why do you do what you do? Because family and culture, because of my family and culture values. Think about that for yourself. What are the values that can explain the purpose behind your caregiving? No, as I said, Brene Brown was the one who researched and collected all the data, and that was about core values. And I want to read this quote from Brene Brown. Living into our values means that we do more than profess our values. We practice them. We walk our talk. We are clear about what we believe and hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, thoughts, and behaviors align with those beliefs. To me, this quote is very powerful because of everything that I just did explain to you, and it actually brings your values into action. Not only do we talk about what we value, we we actually, we talk the talk, but we walk the walk. And this takes us to the second circle here as part of this golden circle concept right here. And the question is how? How do we keep on caregiving? How do we keep on caregiving based on our values? And a way to do that is to have self-awareness. I'm going to take you to next slide here. The question now for us here is, how will you keep on caregiving? How do you feel about caregiving? How do you show up for the person who you care for and for yourself? And I'm going to pause here, thinking back on identifying your values, the purpose behind your caregiving. Now think about, now that you are a caregiver, what are all the things that you have to do to be a caregiver for your person? Are you living with your person? Are you a long distance caregiver? Do you have to manage the finances? Do you have to do the day in, day out of taking taking care of the person? Do you have to schedule doctor's appointments? Are there a lot of things that you need to manage? How do you feel about all these caregiving tasks? How do you feel? Are you overwhelmed? Are you stressed? Are you sad? Are you grieving about the fact that you have to caregive for a person? There are a lot of things that you need to do for caregiving. And in addition to that, I'm going to add on as a young adult in your, I would say your prime time right now is how will you keep on caregiving? How will you spend all the time and the energy taking care of your person while you're trying to carve a life for yourself? As a young adult, again, I'm going to frame it in the in the age range, say from age 18 to 40. These are for your formative years. You have time. This could be a time for you to explore your work possibilities, right? To develop your career. Say maybe relocate for a job opportunity or for a relationship. Maybe you want to pursue higher education. Perhaps you want to travel the world, explore your ambitions. There are a lot of things that at this time is where you can do things for yourself, but you chose to be a caregiver based on your values. You're caregiving on top of all the things that you want to pursue. So going to this slide right here is with you knowing the why to you being a caregiver and then thinking about all the things that you have to accomplish as a caregiver, how will you keep on caregiving? You are only human. How do you feel about caregiving? Let's talk about all the things. Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling resentful? Because instead of pursuing what you want to do, what your dreams or aspirations are during this time in your adulthood, you're caregiving. What comes up for you? How do you feel? And also think about as you are caregiving, how do you show up for the person for who you care for and for yourself? Do you show up just feeling like you're going to be the best caregiver every single day of every minute, every time you show up for your caregiving duties? Is that something that you're aware of? Or maybe sometimes you're not at the highest point of this best version of yourself. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, or maybe you're feeling a little lethargic, low energy. Maybe you're just barely coasting by. Think about these. This is the how part of this golden circle. With having self-awareness, you will be able to answer these questions. By having self-awareness of yourself, by asking these questions, to answer these questions, got to know your capacity. And when I talk about capacity, we're talking about your caregiver capacity and well-being. Here you see a Venn diagram of 3 major components of caregiver capacity with you right in the middle. All right, so here are 3 elements of emotional, physical, and mental. And when I say capacity, this is your personal capacity on how you provide care for your person and also for yourself. How are you showing up emotionally to take care of your person? How are you showing up physically and how are you showing up mentally? Have you thought about these aspects of yourself and your capacity lately? And with this chart right here, it shows you with these 3 components, it can give you the balance you need to continue with caregiving. Going back to those 3 questions I asked, how are you going to keep on caregiving, right? How do you show up for yourself? Give me one more second here. And let's take a look here. 1 second here. And how do you feel about caregiving? Those questions address your capacity. How will you keep on caregiving physically? Do you have the mental strength, the physical strength, and the emotional strength? What does it take for you to keep on caregiving? How do you show up for yourself? Are you emotional? I mentioned this earlier, are there so many things going on in your caregiving world? How is it affecting you emotionally? How is it affecting you? How how is it affecting your feelings? How is it affecting you physically? I can tell you with my grandma, physically it was challenging. First of all, I had to physically be there for my grandma. So for me, I had to check in on my capacity. I had to be there, but then also physically, I had to lift her a lot. I had to figure out if I had the strength to lift my grandma. She weighed 185 pounds, so she was not a light person to lift and to transfer. And I can also tell you that I had to learn about my physical capacity because I wasn't lifting her right. Every time she fell on the floor, I did not do it right. So now I had to figure out how I physically was going to be able to manage taking care of her. And then mentally, here I can share with you, by checking in on this, how do I feel about caregiving on a mental capacity? It's a lot. It's a lot to juggle different schedules. It's a lot to communicate to healthcare professionals. It's a lot to communicate to family members who want to know the update of what's going on with grandma, right? Or even just constantly communicating to my brother about what happened today, what happened tomorrow, making a checklist of things to do. There's a lot of things to juggle. And then also the emotional capacity. Think about that, think about how caregiving affects you. Emotionally, I was frustrated. I wanted to do all these other things, but I was stuck at home taking care of grandma. I have to be honest with my emotions, checking in on how my feelings are for that day. And not only did I have emotions or have feelings about caregiving, I also had to have capacity to have emotions for my grandma, having to provide emotional support for my grandma who at one time in her life was very independent, did not need help with anything. And now she is a care recipient, needing my help, learning to ask for help. I had to learn how to navigate the emotional support for my grandma to make sure that she felt well, that it was okay for her to ask for help. All these are just examples of what how these parts of you can be affected by caregiving, and having self-awareness on how caregiving affects us in these three components will allow us to focus on our well-being. Now, I'm going to take a moment here to invite folks on the chat here to drop in the chat window if you have feelings that you may want to share on capacity. Think about just, the last time that you've thought about your emotional capacity or even communicated your capacity to your family, your friends, your community, or even your care partner. Hmm. And Sam, I see your question on how do you manage it all and take care of yourself and you're feeling burnout. I hear you. There's a lot of things on your plate. And if you hang on tight in our next slide, we'll focus on that part on how we can hopefully do a little bit on addressing the burnout. And thank you for folks for sharing here. Yes, boundaries are important. By understanding our capacity in emotional, mental, physical capacity, we are able to communicate boundaries. Because when we say boundaries, it's very general. But if you're saying and setting boundaries of, hey, that I am at emotional capacity, you're able to communicate to another person where you are. And that perhaps maybe you can't take on any emotions, or maybe you can't process any more emotions at that point in time. And that's just one example. Here you go. I hear you. There's a lot of crying and venting and caregiving. There's a lot of emotions, there are also very highly stressful situations in caregiving where there's a lot of emotions. There could be a lot of anxiety, and there can be a lot of pressure, and there can be a lot of sadness, and there's so many emotions there. Thank you so much for sharing your feelings. And yes, Cameron, it is a lot to lift over and over and over, lift a person over and over again. It takes a physical toll. And well, and we need to find a way to recharge ourselves and take care of ourselves. So that will lead us into the what of the golden circle for caregivers. We talked about self-reflection, understanding the why, or why we are a caregiver, because we figured out our values. And then how we're going to keep on caregiving. Well, we have to have self-awareness of what we're doing. And then how do we maintain those three components that I just shared with you, the mental, emotional, physical components. And this is the what of what we do. What are you going to do about it? And this part is the self-care portion. So what are you going to do then with all this information now that you've figured out on this framework of why and how? What are you going to do? What are your self-care habits? What are your self-care goals? And here I write, know what makes you feel better. Know what makes you feel better. Do you know what makes you feel better? Or perhaps it's a matter of trying things to figure out what does make you better. What makes you feel better? Self-care is a way for us to really check in on our well-being. Commonly, self-care are actions and thoughts that help improve our mental, emotional, physical health. And currently, do you have self-care habits in place that help you take care of those aspects of yourself? Think about that. Is there something you do every day that helps take care of you in those three components, mental, emotional, and physical? And taking it a step further in creating self-care habits, do you have a self-care goal? I take this step a little further in the what of the questioning here is because we can have self-care habits. Habits come and go. Maybe the habit doesn't become a habit at all. Maybe you tried it and it does not make you feel better. So you're going to let that self-care habit go. But if there's something that actually resonates with you and that makes you feel better every time you do it, perhaps you can then set these self-care habits to a higher goal of, hey, okay, well, if it feels good, how can I quantify this? How can I do this more often? How can I set this as a goal? Maybe I do the self-care task once a week or twice a month, or maybe or maybe 4 times a month, every week. Maybe you do it with somebody else. This is the opportunity here. Think of this circle of questioning, of opportunities for yourself. And I'm going to list several self-care habits for us here, in which I'm going to tackle the emotional first, and then the physical, and then the mental self-care habits. And I'm throwing this out there to see if these are things that you can adapt into your current lifestyle. Self-care. We talked about it, being aware of our emotions, right? Now, how do we take care of those emotions? Think about how you can express your emotions to someone, talk to a friend, talk to a healthcare professional. Express your emotions, help process the emotions so you can be more aware of how you can have capacity to continue to provide emotional support for your person. Can practice self-compassion. All your feelings are valid. And in practicing self-compassion is to remind yourself of that. Every caregiving is difficult, challenging, and with that comes with the emotions. What you're feeling are valid. What the feelings of, say, sadness, the feelings of needing to vent about the situation, those are valid. The feeling frustrated on not being able to take care of everything all at once. Like those are all feelings. And by expressing your emotions to someone, you can feel heard, and that can potentially feel better for you so that you can feel like you're not alone. There is power behind not feeling alone in your caregiving experience, and also listening to other people's stories. Read books or listen to audiobooks by caregivers. There's a lot of authors out there, a lot of caregivers who want to share their story because they know that there are other caregivers out there. With apps these days, you can listen to caregiving podcasts, you know, to address your emotions, or you can attend caregiver retreats, attend workshops, and attend conferences. Nowadays, there are retreats, workshops, and conferences designed specifically for caregivers. And this could be a way for you to process your emotions with the community, or figure out tips on how to process your emotions in a healthy way. And here I say with community and being in a peer support group. I'm a huge fan of peer support groups. I can tell you that, as a young adult caregiver back in the day, even though I attended support groups, there wasn't many peers in my age group. And by being in a peer support group that is within your peer group, it definitely helps a little bit better because you can understand each other's experiences a little bit more. I mentioned earlier that during this adulthood stage is that you have the opportunities to define your career, develop your career, or date so that you can find your future partner, can do some family planning, or, just travel the world. These are specific examples, but being in a peer support group of other young adult caregivers, you can also hear about how they emotionally feel about not being able to pursue maybe some of those things. And that by being in that conversation can let you know that your emotions are valid. Going back to the compassion piece, peer support groups, other folks who are young caregivers can provide you with compassion and provide you with empathy. And then being in community as well here is you can join conversation. So if you can't attend peer support groups in person, there's a lot of virtual opportunities. Join social media conversations using specific hashtags. You can young caregivers, millennial, Gen Z, caregivers, or young adults, hashtag even just self-care. These are ways where we can tap into our emotions and process emotions with other folks by joining a social media chat or by attending a peer support group and being amongst peers, or, listen to other people's stories. All of these emotional self-care habits is to provide you an avenue provide you a channel to check in with the emotions and then to be aware of your capacity. And then know that if you need to do more emotional processing, then you need to focus on this specific part of your well-being. Now, moving on to physical. So what are self-care habits that can help us focus on our physical well-being, focus on our physical capacity? One of the things you can do is connect with your body. And how do we do that? There's this thing called a body scan. It's where you just take a moment and you can close your eyes, you can just connect with your body, from top down or bottom up to explore the sensations in your body. Are you feeling physically stressed? Is there pain? Is there tension? When's the last time you connected with the body in terms of just taking a moment to connect? With caregiving, there's a lot of physical things. You're constantly doing things. Taking a moment just to connect with your body can help us be more self-aware of our physical abilities. How about breathing and breath work? There could be caregiving can cause us physical stress, and sometimes maybe we don't even realize we're not even breathing. We can be holding in our breath. Just taking a moment to say, hey, let's check on my breath. And breathe, sleep, try to get some rest, sleep, relax when you can, and exercise. I give you the example of exercise because my grandma was not a light person to lift. So for me, I had to make sure I worked out. I had to make sure I did my stretches, yoga. And it was very important to me. It was so important to me. I slowly put together a gym inside the house, actually in the room right outside grandma's room, because I wanted something to remind me to exercise. And also because I was stuck at home, I needed to make sure I was able to continue um, focusing on my physical self-care habits. Nutrition. Think about nutrition. How do you feed your body with what nutrients, right? Think about things that can give you extra energy, things that can give you things that can make you feel more alert, things that can actually make you feel, I mean, I also say, comfort food is okay. Comfort food is part of nutrition, and it also, probably helps us on the emotional level too. And it's a definition of comfort food. It provides us with comfort. And on here, I write change environment. Maybe sometimes you just need a change of scenery. Maybe you can change if it's a physical thing, you just need to get out the house. Maybe you need to be in a different place. Maybe you can change the decor within your caregiving setting. Perhaps that can change your mood. You don't know until you try it. So this is a habit that you can take on. Personal space. Is there a personal space that's solely dedicated to you in your caregiving world? It can be your car, it can be the bathroom, it can be the garage, it can be whatever you think is your personal space. Find a way to have that for yourself so that you can feel like you're physically taking a break from caregiving. Here, I throw in a fun one. It's a drumming circle. This could be a self-care habit. I actually attended a drumming circle at a caregiving conference, and it was exhausting because I was drumming a lot, but physically it felt really good. It felt like I was releasing a lot of physical stress when I was drumming. I was in a circle of other people just banging the drums, and just the sounds, the sound of listening to other drums and the music and just the vibrations of the drums. It was very cathartic for me. So I throw that in there as an example of self-care. Maybe it's not drumming, maybe it's going to a concert, maybe it's listening to music, whatever gets you in another physical state. Think about things that can make you feel a little bit better. Again, for me, drumming circle, it could be a physical release. And then lastly here, this is just a reminder. Oops, here we go. Don't forget your personal health checks up. You are a caregiver. You're taking your care recipient to all these doctor's appointments. Maybe you're doing that, or maybe you're taking them to whatever other checkups they have. What about yourself? Don't forget to take care of yourself and your physical body. Don't miss your own self-care appointments. And now we're going to jump into the mental. I'm just checking in our time. We have 10 minutes left, and we're going to wrap it up here, but I'm going to focus on this mental piece, and then we're going to wrap it up together and then open it up for questions. So here we have mental capacity, mental well-being, and this is for you to focus on your mental health. Self-care habits that fall under the mental well-being could be journaling. This can be journaling via a book, or now there's apps. You can journal using the app. I personally use a gratitude app on my phone where on a daily basis, I can journal about how I feel about myself and what I'm grateful for. And it is a mental exercise for me to express my gratitude for my life. And so bringing back to just this mental capacity, perhaps you can combine the self-care journaling habit to think about your personal values. Journal what your personal values means to you. Are you grateful that you're able to live a life based on your personal values? Another thing here is meditation. Some folks prefer silent meditation. Some folks also prefer a different type of meditation. What does meditation mean to you? For me, meditation was walking. I actually was walking in a silent meditation. I didn't listen to any music. And to me, walking was a form of meditation where I can just not think about any caregiving tasks. I just focused on everything around me, and it really helped me get mental clarity during those walks. Practice mindfulness. Being mindful of where you are. This is similar to awareness, but being mindful of your mental state. Like, where are you? Like, what are you thinking about? Where are you in this present moment? What are you thinking about? Mantras. Mantras. I love mantras. Mantras are my go-to when I'm feeling just kind of like mentally frustrated on all the things that I need to do. And I throw mantras out here because it's easy to do. You have the power to do it at any time, anywhere. And mantras is basically a series of words or sounds that you make to evoke a specific emotion. So for mantras, I would say, for mantras, I definitely know when I'm in a state of mind, I think about what is my mantra that will take me back to present without me being completely scattered brain. And I share with you an example of mantra is I'm exactly where I need to be. I recite that because I'm all over the place, but when I recite, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm exactly where I need to be, then it allows me to get centered and present with my being of I don't need to be anywhere else. I'm just right here. So that's an example of a power of a mantra. Set reminders. If there's a lot going on, set reminders on your phone, on your calendar of what you need to do so you don't have to keep everything in your head. And use apps. Use apps to take notes. Use apps. You can, if you're not into typing or texting or writing, there's voice memos now. You can record your voice, record your own notes for later. Maybe you can use these apps to record notes from a visit or maybe record your thoughts and feelings. Other apps would be a Calm app. That's also a meditation app. Take advantage of technologies these days where it can save time and it's easy and it's applicable and you can use it wherever you are. I throw in sound bath here. It kind of goes back to my drumming circle. I like to throw a fun one in here just because in sound baths, there's a possibility for you. It's where you immerse yourself in singing bowls. It's or whatever sound. It could be in nature, listening to the rustling of the leaves of the birds. It's a way for us to just take a break from the mental stresses and to focus on other things. And then also, if you feel like this is something that you need to take a look at, and you really want to address your mental capacity, speak to a mental health professional to talk about what challenges you're going through and what's on your mind. All right, I'm going to bring it back together. I know when I went through a lot, but I want to bring it back to the framework. And thank you for staying with me here to go through this type of reflection here. The golden circle for caregivers. We discussed why, how, and what. Why, the question of why are you caregiving? And we answered that with self-reflection. Know your values. Once you know your values, you're going to know your why. That will give you the purpose and the reason for you to continue being a caregiver. Now, how will you keep on caregiving? That comes with self-awareness. There are a lot of things you need to take care of for caregiving. Know your capacity, know how you're going to keep on caregiving mentally, emotionally, and physically. And by having self-awareness of your capacity, then you can determine what you're going to do. And what you're going to do is practice self-care. Self-care, know what makes you feel better. Know what helps you feel better on the emotional and in physical and mental parts of you. Putting us all together here. So I want to leave all of you with this as a quote from Buddha. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows them like a never departing shadow. I share this quote with you because I find that it is very empowering and makes me think about everything that we just talked about in terms of understanding our why, hows, and whats. If we are clear with our caregiving values, if we are clear on those caregiving values, and our actions and thoughts are in alignment with those values. And we also have a self-care practice that supports all of our intentions, then you are actually truly living your authentic self based on the alignments of all of those things. So that's a really good reason to be happy in life because you're just doing, you've discovered why you're doing what you do. You're doing what you're doing because it's what you do. And hopefully, by using the Golden Circle framework, it really helps you discover a part of yourself, discovers a little bit of what caregiving means to you. And I hope that by being able to follow through in your own self-discovery, that you'll be able to find joy and fulfillment in your caregiving journey. And also just have chances of using those self-care habits to revitalize yourself, to maybe revisit your purpose for caregiving and just really view it and take it on from a different lens. You know, there's all of these opportunities to recharge and renew and just continue to be a caregiver for yourself. I wish you uh, lots of fulfillment as you take on the golden circle of caregivers. And that's what I have to share for you. Happy self-caregiving. This is my contact information. Jen at Senior Shower Project. Contact me if you have any questions on all of that. All right, and I'm going to jump in the chat here. Thank you, everyone, for texting here. Let's take a look here. Calvin, while I review some of the comments here from our community, is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, I just wanted to get a poll up at the same time. If people have the ability to complete it, it should just take a moment or two.
Okay. And you're welcome, everyone. Allison, well said. Caregiving is the greatest gift ever. Yes, it's a lot of work, but once you figure out what you're doing, hopefully you'll find like it said, the fulfillment within yourself if everything you do aligns with your values. I see we're sharing resources here. Thank you. We have Red Cross online classes on resources. AARP's caregiver resources. This is wonderful. And part of being in community here, just by being on this webinar, we're actually in our own mini support group here because we're sharing resources in the chat right here.
Well, it looks like, Jen, there aren't any questions for today. Did you see any questions on your end?
I don't see anything here, not at the moment.
Okay. Well, I see we're just about 1 minute before the hour, so it's probably a good time to start to let everyone go because I know we all know that you're quite busy. Probably a lot of you are, taking a lunch break. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. This workshop is part of a three-part series. So next week we're going to be tackling FOMO, fear of missing out, and the week after that, actually, we're going to be doing a journaling workshop. So you can find out more about those or register for those at our website, caregiver.org. So thanks everyone again for joining us, and thanks Jen for spending your time with us today. Time with us today. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for participating. You're amazing caregivers.